The following stories are from the Japanese site 2channel, and have been translated into English by my friend and fellow horror narrator, Phantasmal Wretched. 2chan is known for being the predecessor to 4chan, with the general gist of the site being pretty much the same, namely an anonymous text board. The following horror stories are allegedly true. Number 1. This happened quite some years ago, when I was around 15. Have you ever experienced this in the past, when walking by an abandoned building, getting that overwhelming urge to explore? This is what happened to me. My friend told me there was an absurd abandoned building which was not so far away from where I lived. I didn't know what he meant by absurd, but I remember being as excited as, well, a schoolboy. My friend told me about this place the day before the start of summer vacation. We were both excited and eager to check the place out, so we ended up visiting the abandoned building straight after school, with some kids that we weren't even that friendly with. It took a long time for the kids to all gather outside of the school. When all 8 of us had actually arrived, the sun was beginning to go down. We followed my friend who knew the way like a row of ants. When we actually got there, I remember feeling very disappointed. I was expecting a house with the roof rotting away, the windows smashed, the kind of house that screamed, "I'm haunted." In reality, the abandoned building was quite clean. The only strange thing about it was the location, as it was slightly out of town in the countryside. All of the other kids seemed to be disappointed too, but having come all this way, we decided to explore the place all the same. After some discussion, we cautiously entered through the back door. Looking inside, there were strange things lying all around the place. Beakers, cylinders, microscopes. They were the kind of things you expect to find in the science room at a school. We figured there was no way this was a normal house. But what grabbed my attention the most wasn't the strange instruments lying all around the place, but the massive bookshelf, stuffed from end to end. There were also a few books lying in a pile in front of the shelf. It was obvious that someone had recently messed around with some of these books. We soon found out who the culprit was. It was the friend who had told us about the building in the first place. He asked us all a question.
Do you know why I said this place was absurd?
He pointed towards a specific book and told us to open it. We did, and gasped, horrified. The book was filled with pictures of dead men and women, some with their skin peeled off. Even the friend who had seen the book before became silent and looked uncomfortable. But at that moment, I realized something. Isn't this just the house of a doctor? Although still slightly scared, there was a murmur of agreement from the group, and, as it so often does, logic and reasoning helped relieve some of the tension built up from the fear of the unknown. While the rest of the group looked through other books in the bookshelf, I decided to explore some of the other rooms in the house. The kitchen, living room, bathroom, toilet. After looking through the whole of the first floor, I realized that the person who was living here must have been extremely well educated. It was the style of the house. Even being just 15 years of age, I knew that the furniture was of very good quality. The interior of the house was designed so efficiently, and everything was beautifully packed in, utilizing all of the space available perfectly. Considering all of this, the person who lived here must have been a hard-working doctor or medicine student. I overheard one of the guys saying that a mad scientist must live here. I remember being annoyed at that, and thinking he was a moron. The group quickly became bored of looking through the books, and since it was getting late, we all decided to end the exploration for that day. However, as we continued to explore the first floor, we realized something strange. Even after thoroughly exploring, we found no stairs going to the second floor, but it was obvious when looking at the house from the outside that there was indeed a second floor. Using our small brains, we figured that there would be a flight of stairs outside of the building, but there wasn't. One of our friends found the remnants of perhaps a stairway. If there had been stairs there, they'd definitely been taken down. One of us suggested that perhaps there was something hidden on the second floor. We all made fantastical suggestions as to what could be up there. This immediately sent us into an excited frenzy, and all thoughts of going home vanished from our minds. There was a widespread consent. We just had to see the second floor. We figured that entering through the outside would be easier. We looked around the building and found some pipes that would be easy to climb. To see if it was safe, the best tree climber of the group went to test out the route. That was me. It was easy to climb, but something came to my attention which alarmed me. You couldn't see anything through the upstairs windows. They'd been covered up by newspapers and marker pens, so that barely any light could shine through. As everybody climbed onto the roof of the house, I told them about the closed-off windows, and this seemed to frighten some of them. A few of them decided to go back home. Those were the smart ones. Those of us who stayed behind took a vote on whether we should enter the second floor. In the end, curiosity won. As I led the way to the window, I was half happy, half in deep regret of the decision. There was no choice now, though. I had talked the big talk about checking it out, and I didn't want to look like a coward by backing out now. I summoned all of the courage I had available, and I swung open the window. I gasped. Right in front of me was a woman in a swimsuit, with a large grin plastered on her face. I screamed and thought my heart was going to stop, but then my friend began to laugh at me and patted me on the shoulder. It was just a poster. Everybody laughed. I remember feeling so relieved I couldn't even be bothered to get angry. I looked at the poster again as I tried to enter, and something caught my attention. There was lipstick on the poster where the woman's lips were. Although I thought that was strange, I entered the house, and the guys followed me in. I found myself in an understandably dark and damp passageway. Up until that point, I had thought the individual who lived here was intelligent and had good taste. As we moved further in, the abnormality of the previous resident became more and more apparent. Along the passage were pictures of girls in bikinis and other infatuating costumes. Just this would have been okay, but the faces of the woman had been carved out and replaced with the faces of dead women, obviously taken from one of the books we had found on the first floor. Any positive thoughts I had in my mind vanished. It didn't matter if this was the previous resident who had done this, or a homeless person who had moved in. I looked at the faces of my friends around me. The consensus was, let's get the fuck out of here. As we set to return to the window we used to enter, my friend spoke up in a wavering voice.
There's someone there.
We pointed a flashlight in the direction he was pointing at. There was a door made out of glass at the end of the hallway, and as we all flashed our lights on the door, it became clear that there was a woman wearing nothing but her underwear, staring at us intently. In fact, as we stared, it became clear there were more people behind her, all facing our direction. We just stood there, pointing our lights towards them. We were scared shitless, expecting the woman to rush us. But as we stood there, we noticed that they weren't moving. We ventured towards the door, and as we got closer to it, it became apparent. The room was filled with female mannequins. There must have been 15 or 20 of the things, a miniature forest of mannequins. Someone whispered something about how creepy it all was. Everybody was thinking the same thing. The underwear the mannequins were wearing wasn't the functional type that women would normally wear. Even a school kid like me knew this. They were the type designed to infatuate men. It was like we had a glance into the mind of the person who had been living here. Someone shouted, as if to try and relieve the tension.
My god, the guy who was living here must have been a massive perv.
Everybody laughed. I felt a bit more calm and light-hearted after that. we decided to explore the place a bit more before going home. Looking around the room, there was also a broken TV, toys, a CD player, and a pile of magazines lying around. I opened one of the magazines, and sure enough, all of the women's faces in the magazine had been replaced with those of dead bodies. This in itself made me feel sick, but something caught my attention that made me feel even worse. The magazine was from this month. I went to go and show the others. As we all realized the predicament we were in, we heard something. A faint sound of something moving. Terrified, we all looked around the room in search of what could have caused that noise. We could see all the way to the end of the room. I could see all the books, furniture, and mannequins surrounding the room. That was when I noticed something else. In between the mannequins was a face. I saw a widespread grin, an expression of absolute maleficent glee. "You like these things?" It was a man's voice, but whoever he was, I could just about make out that he was wearing a dress. Someone let out a scream. We all started to panic and ran straight towards the exit. I was the last one out. As I jumped through the window and onto the roof, I heard him speak again. "You like." When I heard that voice, I felt goosebumps rage all over my body. All I remember after that was jumping off of the roof and bolting for the hills. The kid who lived closest told his parents the events of that night, and the next day, the police went to investigate the building. By the time the police arrived, the building was empty. They checked again the following day, but the house was completely lifeless. The man in the house was never found, and the house itself has since been demolished. I once visited the place when I was older, but there was nothing left to see. It was as if all of us had imagined the incident of that night. Even now, when I see an abandoned building, I get the creeps. Number 2. Why is it always the pretty ones? I met her on an open Facebook group, mainly consisting of people from my hometown. I chatted to people on the Facebook group every day. It was a really good way for me to relieve the stress built up daily from the long commute from my house to work, my shitty boss who complains about everything I do, and my work colleagues who only seem to be interested in the news headlines, football, and the secretary's arse. It was fun to just relax and talk to people about my hometown, movies, or whatever else I was interested in, without fear of being judged constantly. Visiting the site every day, it wasn't long until I started getting really friendly with the people in the group. We started talking more about our private lives, and there was discussion that we should meet up in real life. It was around then that a girl called May sent a request to join the group. I accepted the request, and soon after, a comment was up on the group page.
Hi! Nice to meet you all. I've never really used Facebook before, so I don't really know the rules. Hope we can all get along.
Even though this wasn't real life, it's always awkward for someone to join a new group of people that they don't know. In a world where so much human interaction takes place through words typed up on a screen, it's very easy to become isolated. So I decided to send her a message. "Nice to meet you. Let's talk in private chat." As soon as I finished typing, a chat box popped up on my screen. I laughed a little and opened up the chat box.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I was really nervous. Wasn't sure anyone was going to talk to me. I'm so happy.
Whoa, she's pretty cute, I thought to myself. We introduced ourselves and talked about random things. Ended up talking to her past midnight. I know it's stupid, but I was kind of excited about talking to her. May was a 25-year-old office lady. She said she enjoyed her job, but that she tended to make mistakes, and her boss was always getting furious at her. Today, she'd mistakenly copied a file which she was supposed to shred, and was made into a laughingstock as her boss shouted at her at the top of his voice. I pictured the scene in my mind. I imagine May with her straight, long black hair, which extended just past her shoulders, and the boss screaming at her as she hung her head in shame in front of the printer. We both joked about the whole scenario, and I went to sleep in a good mood for a change. As usual at work, my boss was being a massive arsehole. He kept on setting me near impossible tasks, without an ounce of consideration for the time that it would take me. That's not to say my subordinates were any better. When I told them which duties to perform, they just sighed and didn't even look at me. God damn it, why is everyone trying to piss me off, I thought to myself. But in all honesty, I was getting along fine. Although my work colleagues pissed me off, it was no longer causing me any stress. Every day I got home, I would jump straight into the bath, open up a can of beer, and talk to my friends on Facebook. As long as I have this, I don't give two fucks what goes on at work. That probably sounds quite sad to the social butterflies amongst you, but it's how I felt. I started to feel like I had been talking to May an awful lot. I flicked through the chat history, and I saw that most of my comments were from chatting with her. There were a few messages sent to my family and my old friends from university, but that was about it. As I flicked through the chat history on the group though, I noticed that I was the only one talking to May. Nobody else replied to any of her comments, and nobody liked the things that she was posting on her homepage. She was new to Facebook and the group, but I still figured that was a little strange. I mean, it only took a few days for me to be introduced to all of the other members of the group. I thought it was a shame, as she was a really cheerful person. She would probably get along quite well with all of the others, if given the opportunity. Maybe she didn't have the chance because she was so busy talking with me. Anyway, every day I got home, I'd perform my daily routine. I'd jump in the bath, crack open a beer, and sit in front of my computer talking to May. I would type, "I'm back," and as soon as I did, she would reply,
Welcome home, Masato. Hope you had a nice day at work.
I felt as if May was my girlfriend. After a little while, I decided to contact my old friends on the channel. Hi guys, I want to speak to you about May. She seems to be isolated in our group. Do you guys think you could talk to her as well? She says that she wants to get to know more members. I waited, but there was no reply. 5 minutes passed, 20 minutes, 2 hours, but still no reply. I tried contacting a few others, but no one replied to me. I was pissed off. Why were they ignoring me? I scrolled through the public chat histories to see when the last time they were on the group page was, but as I scrolled further and further up, there was no sign of their presence anywhere. Eventually, I realized my original friends that invited me onto the group were no longer using the page at all. A few days passed, and finally I got a reply from one of the people I contacted.
Hey man, I know you're friendly with that May girl, so I'm sorry for saying this, but you should stay away from her. Don't give her your real address or phone number, and whatever you do, don't try to meet her in real life.
What the fuck is this guy talking about? Hey, are you jealous or something, dude?
Look, just take it from me. That girl is bad news. Just keep it to talking to her online and don't get too close to her.
Why? What's your problem with her? Beyond my annoyance, I felt depressed. It had been a while since I'd made any friends, and they turn out to be the same kind of judgmental arseholes I have to interact with at work. After an hour, I received a reply.
You know it's not just me who doesn't talk to her. Everybody doesn't. There's a reason for that. That group page is actually a new group we made after getting rid of the first one. The group name was different and I met all the creators of the new group from there. Not long after creating that first group, that girl May joined. You know, we thought the more members the merrier. So like you, we chatted to her normally, and it wasn't a problem. At first.
He went on to tell me about how this May girl had joined their old Facebook group and grew close to one of the old members, a guy called Noboru. They became so friendly online, in fact, that the two of them decided to meet up in real life and quickly became intimate. Okay, whatever, I thought. Nothing strange so far. I continued to read.
One day, I received a private message from the guy who had met up with May. It just said, "Help." I guessed he was joking or something, so I didn't take it seriously. I just replied, "Ha ha, what's up, dude?" Immediately, I got a reply. It said, "I don't know what to do. Fuck, I don't know where I am. Help." I was talking to the rest of the group later that day, and apparently a few people had received the same kind of messages from him. We all tried to contact him over and over again, but we never got a reply. Then, after a week, he just suddenly left the group. I went to his Facebook page, but he no longer had a Facebook page either. I think he must have deleted it.
He said that there were literally hundreds of messages from her, demanding to know where Noboru was.
Anyone know where he is? I went to his house, but he wasn't there. I'm calling him, but getting no replies. Someone please tell me where he is.
Due to work obligations, the other members of the group didn't even see the messages at first. Reading through them later, they noticed that the messages became more and more extreme.
I know one of you are hiding him. Fuck you. I'll find him if that's the last thing I do. I love him. I'll kill you all along with him if you don't hand him over.
Apparently, since no one was replying to her, she left the group, to the relief of all of the other members. They all unfriended her, and thought that was the end of it. That's when they set up the new private Facebook group, just to be on the safe side. After a couple of years, they again set the group to public, and apparently a few days after that, I happened to join. Not too long after is when they all received the notification, "May has joined your group." His message concluded.
She had a different surname this time, but I knew it was her. The way she talked, the things she liked, were the same as the previous May. I don't know what happened to the guy, but some sinister shit must have happened. I mean, who just closes their Facebook account without saying anything?
This was all fucking ridiculous. True, that story about May was terrifying, but there was no proper evidence to suggest that the May I was friends with was the same May. He even admitted that she looked different in the pictures now, but remained adamant that he thought it was still her. But the May I knew was lovely, and there's plenty of people with her name in Japan. And so what if their writing is similar? Most girls I know write in roughly the same way, and lots of them have similar interests as well. You can't say they're the same person just because of that. That Facebook group was made for people living in the same town anyway, so it made sense that there was a lot of similarities between the members of the page. These were all of the things I was telling myself at the time. I just replied, "All right, mate. I don't think this is the same girl, though." It was late autumn, early winter, and I'd actually made plans to meet up with May. We'd decided to meet up at a bar in town. I'd been there a couple of times before, and she said that she liked the place too, so we figured it would be a perfect place for us to meet up. I'm not sure if it was due to the prospect of finally meeting her, but I worked harder than usual at work on the day of the meetup. I left at 5 PM on the dot. Once I got home, I washed myself, brushed my teeth, put on my best set of smart casual clothing, and then skipped down to the bar. It was very cold that day, and it had been snowing on and off. I didn't want to keep her waiting in the cold, so I decided to leave on the early side. I got to the bar 20 minutes early, but already there was someone waiting for me just outside. May?" I asked, slightly embarrassed. It was dark, and she was looking down at her phone, so I couldn't see her face. She looked up at me.
Masato? Hey!
She was stunning. Her black hair had grown out slightly longer than in her profile picture, and now reached down past her shoulders. When she looked up, her dark eyes sent my heart fluttering, and instinctively I looked away. Suddenly nervous, I replied, yeah, I hope I didn't make you wait." She timidly smiled.
No, I've only just arrived. Do you want to go inside? It's quite cold out here.
We sat down at the counter and ordered some drinks. Although I was nervous at first, it soon became clear that this was the exact same May I knew from online. After only a few minutes, we were laughing together and talking naturally, just as we did on the net. We talked well into the night, and before we even knew it, the barman announced that the bar was closing. We stepped outside into the freezing cold. Since entering the bar, it had started to snow again. May leaned on my shoulder.
I think I've had too much to drink.
My heartbeat suddenly sped up. Be cool, I told myself. Do you want to rest at mine? It's pretty close. I could hear my heart pounding.
Can I?
Yeah, that's fine. No trouble at all. Have a glass of water and a little rest. She stopped leaning on me and got to her feet.
Okay, let's go.
We held hands and slowly stumbled back to my place. We had sex. She lay next to me with a peaceful face. I looked at her, and once again, I was astounded by how beautiful she was. I just couldn't believe my luck. The next morning we exchanged phone numbers, and she went back to her home. After meeting May, I started going on Facebook less and less. If I wanted to talk with her, I'd just call her up or text her. I also hardly said anything on the Facebook group anymore. I received messages from my friend, but I didn't bother replying to him. Every Friday before the weekend, May and I would meet up, and she would stay around mine. If she was free for the whole weekend, she'd stay around my place on Saturday, and would make me breakfast in the morning. She even helped me clean up my house. Honestly, I can't remember enjoying life as much as I was enjoying it then. May was literally perfect in every single way. Her only fault was that she would get agitated quite quickly when I wouldn't respond to her messages straight away. She'd send me messages like,
Are you busy? What happened? Do you not like me? Sorry, it's annoying for you if I keep sending messages, isn't it? I'll be waiting for you.
If I left my phone for more than an hour, I'd have received at least 20 or 30 messages from her. It had been roughly 2 months since I had first met May in person. During the end of the year, work tended to get busy, and I had a lot of stuff I had to get done before the holidays started. I couldn't even take a lunch break, and I'd have to do overtime practically every single day. In fact, it had been a while since I had last been able to meet May. I began to sense that something was the matter with her. Actually, no. Deep down, I think I'd known that for a while. There was just something off about her. I had been having to work without rest that day. When I finally got back home, it was midnight. I sat down and took a look at my phone to find literally hundreds of messages from May. I quickly replied to her and explained I'd been busy at work.
Thank God. I thought you must not like me anymore. I'm really sorry for bothering you with so many messages.
She was the same May as usual, but I noticed something strange. She'd been sending me messages every 3 minutes. But how could she do that? She worked during the day as well, after all. It was nearing the end of the year, too. All firms were extremely busy this time of year. If May did have a full-time job, such a feat would be impossible. I sent her a message. Won't you get in trouble sending me messages during work? Again, literally seconds after I sent my message, I got a reply.
It's okay. The place I work at isn't busy at all.
Could that be true? I guess if she says so, I'd better believe her. We were a couple after all. I switched my phone off and got into bed. I always had to switch my phone off. Otherwise, it would be buzzing constantly until the morning. I couldn't help but remember what my friend had told me about the other May. The next day, I got off work at around 11 PM and returned to my house to find May sitting outside of my front door.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. I really want to see you.
I was worried. It was still only Wednesday. This wasn't our normal routine. We should both have work tomorrow morning.
Sorry, is it a bother?
No. It's okay, but
Thank God. I've decided to stay here tonight. I'll head straight down from here to work.
now I notice she had a rucksack with her. It probably had her work clothes in it. She's gotta be kidding. I've got a really important meeting tomorrow. In the end, I just let her into the house without putting up much of a fuss. I told her I needed to sleep, but she didn't listen to me. She had other plans in mind. By the time we'd finished, or more accurately she'd finished, it was around 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't even have the strength to lift my cup of coffee the next morning. I somehow managed to get up and dragged myself to work. I messed up my morning meeting. I was so tired due to the previous night, and all of the late nights doing overtime leading up to it. I couldn't remember half of my speech, and my boss scolded me, telling me I'd be demoted if this shit happened again. After the scolding, I went to the toilet to check my phone. I had 86 messages and 18 voicemail recordings when it had only been 4 hours since I'd last seen May. I made up my mind. The next day, May was waiting for me at my doorstep again. I led her inside, made her a cup of green tea, and looked her straight in the eyes. Sorry, May. We can't be together anymore. She looked at me dumbfounded.
We're so good together. It's okay. I understand. You're having a hard time with work, aren't you? It's okay. We'll just see each other when the holidays start. I'll be good and wait for you.
I turned away. I couldn't even bear to look at her anymore. I'd heard the same thing a million times from her, and I didn't believe her at all. I'm sorry, but I've made up my mind. It's over. Pack up your things and leave. I don't want to see you anymore.
I get it. You're tired. It's okay. I'll go home now. We'll see each other again in a few days.
I realized at that point I was almost shouting, but May just didn't seem to understand anything I was saying. She just smiled. I could tell from her voice that she wasn't fazed at all. She really meant what she was saying. I remembered my friend's warning again. Don't get too close to May. After that, I ignored all of May's messages. Every time she'd call me, I'd block her calls. A week passed. Ignoring her messages had been a success. She'd stopped messaging me altogether now, and since that night, she hadn't shown her face around my place. Everything had worked out. I didn't feel like doing anything for the next few days. I opened up a bottle of wine, watched some TV, and then got into my bed. Before midnight, I was fast asleep. It was the middle of the night. I heard something.
Mass.
What was that sound?
Misato.
I thought I was dreaming at first, but slowly it became apparent that I was not alone in my room. I sat up in my bed. There was a silhouette of a person in my doorway. My eyes were still adjusting to the low light, but I could tell it was May by the tone of her voice and the outline of her figure. It didn't take me long to notice the knife in her hand. She must have got it from my kitchen. She was mumbling something about betrayal, and how, if she couldn't have me, nobody could. Honestly, what she was saying was mostly unintelligible. With every wipe of my eyes to clear the sleep from them, I realized she was getting closer and closer to me. It's strange. I wasn't scared, perhaps because I was dazed and confused from being awoken in the middle of the night. Everything was very automatic. I ejected myself from the bed, and I rushed at her, slamming the full weight of my body into her. She went flying downwards, smashing into a set of drawers. I remember thinking that she smacked into the furniture at such a force that she just might have broken her neck. That turned out not to be the case. Either way, my only thought was of escape. I was outside in the freezing cold within seconds, wearing nothing but my underwear. I ran to my neighbor's house and knocked on the door frantically, continually checking over my shoulder to make sure she wasn't behind me. Looking down at the ground, I noticed specks of red in the snow at my feet. Because of the adrenaline in my system, I hadn't noticed that she had slashed my arm deeply during our collision. The folks next door eventually opened up and allowed me to use their phone to call the cops. Had they not recognized me, they would most likely have ignored me, thinking I was some crazy midnight streaker weirdo. When the police arrived, May was no longer in the house. She had fled, taking my diary, computer, and phone with her. I was taken to the hospital, where they stitched my arm up. It took a while, but eventually they tracked her down. It's been 3 years since that night, and still nobody has heard from the previous guy who vanished. I'm certain that she had a hand in his disappearance. I truly believe she paid him a similar visit to me, but that he happened to be a much heavier sleeper than I was. She played dumb about the whole thing though. I see people upload all kinds of things on social media sites nowadays, but just remember that there are some psychos out there in the real world. The best things happen in the dark.